Today's episode is brought to you by AOS Kitchens, the South's leading outdoor kitchen design and installation specialists.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Meet and Greet Barbecue Podcast. Today we have something very special for you. We were lucky enough to get a bit of time with matblak, who has a phenomenal story about how he got into cooking and barbecue. But I'm going to let Matt go through all of this. This is part one of our episodes with Matt, and this is his story. Without much further ado, here's Matt. Hello, Matt. Thank you so much for taking time to speak to us today. Before we go any further, please do introduce yourself to everyone that's listening.
Absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Matt Burgess, AKA matblak. A lot of people have asked me where I've got matblak from, and yes, you're correct. I am a 52-year-old male. Still, there's kept his hip-hop name from when he was 16 years old. And I don't know why I have done that, but it kind of is cool, and it has followed me around everywhere. So that's where the name matblak came from.
You're about to kick us in with a bit of a rap, or...
No, I'm not. No,
Okay.
no, there's absolutely no way. Back in like 1988, that would have been really cool. Right now in 2026, I would look absolutely stupid. But yeah, it was I was in a situation where I was in a beatbox competition and I didn't have a hip hop name. And on the side of the stage, there was a paint tin of matte black emulsion. And that's where I said, that's going to be my hip hop name. And that was ever since I was 16. And I walked out on stage and I won. I was the Wellington beatbox champion in 1988, which is, no, I'm not going to do beatbox, but thanks for asking.
Hey, at least you didn't go with the other option of emulsion, you know?
Yes, yeah, it was. I did consider it. You know, I could never really spell it because I'm dyslexic. So, yeah.
Well, how did you go from that point into your journey into cooking?
Yeah, it was crazy. I think I should probably start from the beginning. And I will try and get through this as quick as possible. You know, a normal childhood. Went to school as most other kids did, and my mother was working at a large sort of car firm. It was called Cable Price Toyota. It was a Japanese car firm, and she was secretary to the director there, the CEO. So, think life was good, money was good, everything was coming through. And then when I reached probably around about 10 or 11 years old, I started getting those pangs of rebelliousness and stuff. So I thought, I probably was showing off way too much in school and in class and, doing stupid things. And I started sort of getting into fighting and, marijuana was very prevalent in New Zealand at the time. So, I kind of started getting into that around about 10 and 11. And then my mum sadly got made redundant. And that kind of like changed all of our lives. I'm an only child. I've never met my father. He took off when I was young. I have no brothers or sisters. And so when she was made redundant, she got quite a large payout. And her dream and aspirations was always she loves food and she's always loved food. She was a very proficient home cook, but she wanted to run some type of food operation. Her parents, my grandparents, were fantastic gardeners and real old school British home cooks. They're from the UK. They moved over in the early 1920s. So my mum was sort of brought up and inspired by that. So she decided to buy a delicatessen, and she started making all the things within a delicatessen, things like charcuteries and salamis and salads and, all these incredible things to, put on display. But sadly, just up the road, just after she opened, there was a large supermarket that opened and that just killed her. And so over those 2 years of my teenage years, probably 13 to 14, I watched her decline into alcoholism. I watched her business decline into just the most horrific place where, she had to let it go, and she was declared bankrupt, and the bailiffs came and emptied our house, and we came home and there was nothing. And we went from living a very comfortable life to absolutely having nothing. And at that time, obviously, that I got caught at school smoking marijuana, and it was put in front of me that I would either have to go to a drug rehabilitation place, or I would be expelled. So that was sort of the terms of the suspension that I was doing. Just to remind you, I was 13 years old. So when I walked into this drug rehabilitation center, there was Henry and Steve, who were both heroin addicts for 30 years. And this was sort of the level of people that I was having to be involved with for a month. And it just made me super uncomfortable. And I think that, and it's one of the things that I try to do now is educate people about drugs, because there are very different drugs out there and very different levels of drugs and what they do. But anyway, it was a no compromise with the headmaster of the school that I was going to, and he said, you either do this or you leave. And us trying to explain to him, going, the heroin and marijuana are very different drugs. And actually you're probably putting a 13-year-old child in more danger to be around this. So anyway, cut a long story short, I was expelled from that school. I got given a second chance to go to another school. And it was kind of like a correspondence school for young kids who were in similar situations to me. Some were there from victims of, abuse. Some were from, other sort of underprivileged backgrounds. And some kids were like me who had been expelled. So it was a really great environment, really beautiful environment. And I got the opportunity there to be like sort of class captain or school captain. And I sort of, it was a very strange role for me to take, because I'd never been in a situation of leadership. And I was only a kid. I was like 14 years old at the time. And to be given this opportunity was really weird. But and it was very much a self-sufficient school where you do correspondence work. And every now and then the director would come down and they would check the schoolwork that you're doing and making sure that you're doing. And one day he left the school to me and he said, look, I trust you. You're going to, look after everyone in the school. And I did. And we had such a great day. We cleaned everything up. And as an incentive and as a thank you from me, I decided to blow the whole school out with marijuana. And so it was the second school I was expelled from. And then I went to a place called Porirua College, where it was really strict. It was one of the toughest schools in the country. And I sort of finished my work there. So within that environment, it was, I think you call it Borstal over here in New Zealand. We call it Tapan, which is kind of like a boys' home. And it's not so much a prison, but it kind of is. Like you're under house arrest. You can't go out. I won't get into sort of what I got into to get there, but it was really going off the handles. I was like 15 years old. My mum's an alcoholic. I've been kicked out of school. I had no life. There was no chance. I was 14 years old. I got my girlfriend pregnant. It was just, I was on the path to destruction, basically.
Yeah.
And so when I finished the school, I decided that my only dream was to join a gang. And that was my sort of main goal. Now, for you to go on to, we called it the dole. I think you used to call it that over here. Now you call it universal credit, I believe. But back in New Zealand, for you to go on to that, for somebody who was my age, you had to prove that you were actively looking for work. And by doing this, they had schemes called access schemes. And so there was two access schemes that were available to me. One was catering, the other one was horticulture. Now, obviously, I'm going to choose horticulture because why? I want to learn how to grow marijuana and sell it. So I started this horticulture course, and I realized very quickly that it was hard fucking work. Working really hard. So I lasted there, I think it was about 2 days, to be honest. And I was quite impressed with myself that I lasted that long. And then obviously going back to my care worker, my social care worker, they were like, well, you're going to have to do the catering side. For me, working in the kitchen, and I know you can't really say this, but I'm going to say this now. It's kind of like back then, it wasn't very honorable job. It was considered to be quite girly. There's like woman's supposed to be in the kitchen, and that shows how much time's have passed. Anyway, so I wasn't really happy about going there, but I had to do this to get the dog. So when I went in there, I started was being shown things like how to truss a chicken, how to boil an egg, the different elements of eggs and what they do and how they perform differently in different dishes and stuff. And weirdly, I knew most of the stuff that the tutor was showing me, and he was saying sort of things like make an omelette, and I knocked up an omelette, and I look around me at the other 17 students, and they were just absolutely fucking shit everywhere. It was awful. Oh, are we allowed to swear on this?
Yeah.
My apologies. If
You say what the fuck you want.
No.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Sorry. I should have asked that. And yeah, so I was like in this environment where the tutor was like, hey, like, where did you learn to cook like this? And I didn't realize, but at that point, I sort of went back in my mind, was like, how did I do that? And it was my mum who showed me as a young child, as I was growing up, that was her love language to me. Was always like, let me cook for you, let me show you. And she would used to do things like, okay, this is how I boil an egg, and this is in there. And like I was like, I remember these things like when I was 4, 5, 6 years old, sitting on the kitchen floor and just watching my mum make these incredible dishes. And I thought everybody knew this, and I thought like arrogantly that every single home was like my home, that every single mum and parent and father could cook as well as my mum. And then I really quickly realized, especially in this room that I was in with all these really bad, incompetent chefs, that yeah, I actually had a skill. And it was my first time that I was like, oh wow, actually I'm finally good at something in my life, rather than smoking weed, or trying to grow marijuana, which kept on dying on me anyway when I did try to grow it. So the chef said to me, like, when you leave this course, I think that you should consider a job in catering. So when I left the course, I went, fuck that, I'm never doing that again. It's fucking shit. And got onto the dole, which I was so happy about. So then I just proceeded to spend the next couple of years after that smoking marijuana, and not really doing too much. And a friend of mine that was working close to where my mum lives said that there had been a job opening happen at this factory that made fresh pasta. So why don't you go down? It's a couple of days a week. You're just packing boxes. It's, for sending off to supermarkets. So I was like, okay, yeah, can make a bit of extra cash on the dole and stuff. And I went there, and it was my first real job of working with food. So it was a sort of a large factory that had these Italian ravioli machines and fresh pasta machines that would spit out these, pasta shapes onto these pasteurizer machines. They would go through like this heated sort of steam treatment, and then go onto these big cooling racks. And then they'll come to you, and you would weigh them out into these containers, and they put them onto these sort of vac pack machines, vac pack them. Then you'd pack them in boxes, and they'd go out. So I was doing that, and I got into the work, and I got into like the value of money, and how things were really helping. And I was like, oh my God, I can actually contribute to mum. And by this time, mum was sort of coming out of her depression a little bit and thinking maybe I should get back into work. And it was really hard on her, but that was her dream, and I watched her dream just was destroyed in front of her. And that was really, really hard. But, being able to provide for my mum, and to give her some money, and so she could just like survive, was really satisfying. And I felt like finally in my life that I was like kind of making a difference. Still, my dream was to join a gang. It was one of New Zealand's biggest gangs, and my best friend at the time was gearing up to prospect for it. And, with doing that, we were doing a lot of illegal activities. He was a fighter. I was more sort of like a thief, and, I did burglaries and robberies and sort of things like this. And we're trying to sort of get a bit of notoriety to get into the gang. And it came up to the time where we were supposed to go to the pad, basically, and you go through a prospect. thing. And the prospect thing is, you'll get the hell beaten out of you, and then once, if you can handle it and you can stand up afterwards, then you'll get given a patch or a t-shirt and say that you're in the gang. Luckily, at that time, I had some really good friends around me, and they sort of spoke to me during the day and said, like, nah, you shouldn't do this. Like, you're better than this. Like, I think that you shouldn't do this. Just let him go. And he came over, and I gave him back like the t-shirt that we were supposed to wear. And I said, look, I'm not going to go with you. And he went, and he was hospitalized for 3 months. So I dodged a huge bullet that day. And it was really hard for me to watch. I had to go into hospital and go visit my friend. And basically, he came from a very bad background, so didn't have any parents or any family that really loved him. So it was just me and my mum that were like kind of caring for him. So that was a really sort of tough thing to see. But I had a job, and life was reasonably okay. Weed was still very predominant in my life, and sort of things were ticking over. And then one day I had a phone call from an old school friend of mine, and he called me up on a Friday afternoon and said, hey, my kitchen hand or kitchen porter over here has cut his hand. I'm working at this restaurant. Can you come and help us out for one night? I didn't really want to do it. I'm just like, look, I'd never want to be a chef. I don't want to fucking come into your kitchen. I don't want to wear those stupid hats and stuff like this. And he goes, please just come. Like, just why not? I'll pay you $100. So a bit of math in my head, I worked out I could buy half an ounce with that. So I was like, I'm on my bike, I'm straight.
You knew your priorities.
I'm like, fucking, I'm there. Don't worry. Don't worry. And yeah, it was a really defining moment in my life. When I walked through that back door, I can still remember the smell of the bins. I can still remember the smell of the kitchen. I can still remember the first two chefs that I saw. And I walked in, and it was kind of like, oh wow, fucking hell. Everyone here in this place is like me. They're all social outcasts, and they're all fucking degenerates, exactly like me. And you had all these fucking really like weird fucking big burly tattooed neck tattoos, face tattoos, ex-prisoners, all cooking the most beautiful food I'd ever seen in my life. And I was sit there, I was like, fuck, just blown away. They had caught me hook, line, and sinker, and I was just like, absolutely, this is me. This is fucking me. I absolutely love this. And then after service, I was terrible that night, by the way. And I have no idea why at the end of the night that they did offer me a job. Um, you know, Generally, like, you've got to work at a pace when you're working in a restaurant like this, because all the dishes and everything just get like all piled up and stuff. And by the time service ended, like, my section was just covered in shit and everywhere. And then the chefs had to finish cooking and come and help me because I was just too slow. But at the end, the chef called me out into the restaurant and gave me a shot of tequila and a beer, and said, I've heard about your story. I've heard about, like, your background. I'm going to throw you a bit of a bone here, and why don't you come and work for me, and I'll teach you how to cook. So I was like, no, I fucking hate kitchens. I at home smoke weed. And he's like, well, look, just go home, have a think about it. And I did. I thought about it really hard over the weekend. And again, I didn't have many male role models in my life at the time. But my uncle, who lived in another city in New Zealand, I called him and I asked him, and he's like, well, you can still do what you love. And my passion at the time was music. And he's like, you can still do your music, but it's good that if you learn a trade, you've got something to fall back on and later on in life. So just do it and see what you think. So I did. I jumped into the kitchen and I started working and, learning the trade. And, there was just um, crazy antidotes and scenarios that I could like go on for forever. But I realized that we haven't even reached my journey to London yet. So we'll brush over that a little bit. But, if I'm going to fast forward it, I'll fast forward it, till I was about 23, 24 years old. And I had moved out of mum's, and I was cooking in a restaurant in New Zealand. It was one of the hottest new openings in New Zealand, and I was a very proficient chef. I'd been cooking for about 8 years since then. And a friend of mine was just finishing uni, and he said, "Look, I'm going to travel." And my dream was always to go to England. One, because the drugs were really cheap, and two, this incredible club scene. So that was my only reason wanting to come here, was go clubbing and take drugs. That's it. That's all I wanted to do. So he got a loan from like quite a large loan for when you finished university in New Zealand. Your bank offered you, we're going to give you a startup loan to start your own business. So obviously, with the irresponsible fucking idiots we were, we took this money and said, fuck, let's go traveling. And anyway, he's like, I'm going to go do a ski season in Queenstown, and then he'll come back to Wellington, and then me and him are going to fly to Australia, and we're going to do this. And I was like, I was so happy. And he goes, but I need you to save some money. I was fucking useless at saving money. I was deeply addicted to marijuana, and that's all I wanted to do. But he had the money, so I was like, oh, I'm okay. Like, I could save up a couple of $100 and we'll go there, we'll get a job, and then I'll be fine. 6 months later, turned up to my house, and he turns around to me and says, so sorry, I spent all the money. I was like, fucking what on? He goes, weed. And I was like, you fuck, man. So, look, I've only got enough money for my ticket, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Australia. I'm going to get a job, and then I will save up some money. I'll pay for your ticket. You come over, you come work with me where I'm working. Made a lot of sense in my head. I was like, okay, yep, that's cool. I was quite dejected because I was like, fuck, I just want to get out of New Zealand. I just want to do this. At that moment, and this is a real true story, at that moment, my girlfriend walked out, and she had the cordless phone. So we didn't have mobiles then. She had the cordless phone, and mum's on the phone. There's something wrong. And so I was like, fuck, what's going on? She's like, I need you to come home right now. Right now. Like, don't even fucking question it. Just get into a taxi, a car, whatever. Just, I need you home. So obviously I had my best friend there, my girlfriend. We fucking jumped into his car straight away. Fucking mad drive all the way back to Miramar, where my mum lives. And as we pulled up, I saw her on the veranda, and she's like bawling her eyes out, hands in her head. So I bolted out of the car, grabbed her, and I picked her up. And I just, like, we had been burgled probably about a year and a half earlier. And they basically, like, after the bailiffs came originally and took pretty much everything, the only stuff that we had left was like my grandmother's wedding ring and some nice jewelry for my mum. And it was burgled. So I was like, who the fuck has burgled us again? Like, why? Like, we have nothing. Like, what do they want? My Dinosaur Junior tapes? It's like, I had nothing of value there.
Yeah.
And so I went and grabbed mum, I lifted her up, and she pushed a piece of paper in my hand, and I opened it up, and it said 200,000 confirmation. And I looked at her, I said, what's this? And she goes, just one on a scratch card. And she had won $200,000 on a scratch card. And so within 2 weeks, I got the fuck out of New Zealand and never went back.
Wow. It was such a sliding doors moment for something like that to happen.
So, when I'll never forget the day that we went to Camelot in New Zealand to go pick up the money. And you can be photographed and you can be in the paper and they give you the big check, or they can just do it privately, which what my mum opted for. I remember sitting in the room and they like handed her the check, and the first thing that she thought of is that she hadn't bought a vacuum cleaner in like 20 years, and she's just like, oh, I can get a vacuum cleaner now. I was like, Mum, you could probably get 30 vacuum cleaners now and we'll have change, But yeah, obviously she got the money, she deposited it in her bank account. And while like we were sort of sitting there talking about what we want to do, like she was like, well, we've got two options. Like, one, I'm gonna put down a deposit on a house for you and set you up here in New Zealand for life. Or two, I want you to travel the world. And I was like, what would you do? And she's like, get the fuck out of here, never come back. You've got so much potential and you haven't discovered it yet. Said, like, you're really good at what you do, but like you haven't found yourself. And she's like, when I lived in the UK, I found myself and I came back, and that's where I got like all my sort of passion from. And she was like, yeah, just go and do it. So, within 2 weeks I was on a plane. We decided to fly into Sydney first. I'd never been out of New Zealand in my life. I was 24 years old, and I flew into this incredible new country, and I was just dumbfounded with everything, and being able to go to a place and not worry about money was one of the things that I have never felt. But also, one of my biggest recommendations is that never give 50 grand to a 24-year-old drug addict.
God.
What do you think that I wanted to do with that money consistently? And I had a great time, I have to say. It was a lot of fun. I stayed in Australia for a year, and inadvertently, I ended up working with the mafia. It wasn't intentional, and I had no idea that I was. But the place where I was working, I didn't realize. I come to realize it now, but at the time, being so young and naive, I was like, my God, like this is such a beautiful place, but there's no one that eats here. But it's just so fucking beautiful. And how do they afford to keep the doors open? Like people coming to eat today, and we're getting like the best produce in the world, like San Manzano tomatoes, fresh burrata being flown in from Italy every day. I'm like, what the fuck? And they were obviously using it as a laundromat, basically, to obviously wash their money. But the day that I kind of found out was I was in the kitchen, and the manager comes running in and said, "Oh, the boss is coming in." I was like, "Oh, cool, be great to finally meet him." He goes, "No, no, no, the boss is coming in. Like, you just like keep away. Don't talk to him. He doesn't like people talking to him." I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is a bit weird." And then two guys, it was 40 degrees that day in Melbourne. Two guys walk into their wearing full long duffel coats, shotguns underneath their jackets, come in, they check everything, all my fridges, check my bag, check me, stand at either side of the door, and then a limo pulls up. This guy gets out, he has a coffee, and you're like, yeah, sure. Okay, I don't think I'm going to work here anymore. This place is not really for me.
Yeah.
And really jump into this world. Like, I'm already like not great, but I pretty much left that day. And then we obviously came over to the UK. And when we arrived here, I did the typical Kiwi thing and slept on a sofa. And there was a lot of British people that were staying in this house that I was staying at. And so the first thing I had to do was get a job. And I was like, so like, how do you do that here? I just stepped off a plane at Heathrow, and it was the biggest city, the biggest thing. The tube network scared that living crap out of me. I just couldn't work anything out. I've got no sense of direction. I was just so scared by the place. And one of the English guys said, "Oh, you buy this paper from the off license called a loot, and inside every Thursday they'll have all the chef jobs there. So just have a look in that." So I called the first one that I saw, and picked up the phone and spoke to a chef, and he's like, "Look, I don't do interviews. I just do trials. So if you could come to the restaurant at 7:30 in the morning, and you'll work till about 4, and we'll see how you do." And I was like, "Cool." And he was like, "Okay, do you know where Soho is?" And I was like, "No idea." And he was like, "Okay, so I need you to come to Soho. You're going to find a green door. Knock on the door 3 times. A lady's going to come down and get you, and they're going to bring you up to the restaurant." Now, back in that day, that was kind of acceptable. I wouldn't fucking, suggest to anybody to do that now in Soho. You're probably going to end up in
Very different experience.
very, very different. But my first experience of walking through Soho at 7 o'clock in the morning was, a guy walking up to me and saying, "Do you want to buy some socks?" And I'm like, "What? What's going on?" The concept of homeless people, we didn't have them in New Zealand at the time, or that. So I didn't understand like who these people were and why they smelled like urine, and and just like they were trying to sell me crazy shit like PlayStations and half a bike. It was like, "Oh, I've got half a bike. Do you want half a bike?" Half a bike? Like, what the fuck am I going to do? It was just like, if you could imagine a really naive person from a village coming to this huge city and just finding out and at the time Soho was just a massive crack den. It was filled with all these wonderful, beautiful creatives, very much a huge gay community there, and crackheads, so it was just this amazingly crazy place for me to go. But obviously I went there, knocked on the door, lady came down and got me. I went up to the kitchen, met the chef, and it was Soho House. And Soho House had just opened, basically. It was the hottest place in the UK. I had no idea. Like, I didn't know what Soho House was. I didn't even know the type of clientele that were coming in. So when the chefs were saying, "Oh my God, David Beckham's out there," I was like, "Who the fuck's that?" Like, I've never heard of him in my life. Like, who are these Spice Girls? They're really pretty, but like I have no idea what they are. Like, they shot the movie in Soho House, and I was there that day watching Nick Jones and the general manager play their part. And I had no idea who these people, talking to Jerry Halliwell, going, "Oh, this is going to be a good movie. It's a bit cheesy though, isn't it?" Like, and it was just crazy to me. But I did really well there, and from that point on, I went to open Babington House, which is their first hotel in Somerset, and I did really well there as well. And as a incentive, or as a thank you, they've also got a yacht out in Cannes where they used to sort of, the best sort of workers within Soho House and Cafe Bohème, they'll take them out to go work there for a couple of weeks. And they were like, "Matt, you've worked so hard. Please come out and you can come hang out on the boat and stuff." And that was just an incredible, like, sailing around the French Riviera. Again, I'd never been to France in my life. I'd never seen any of this. But one of the things is that the executive chef knew that I had never been to a Michelin star restaurant. So he's like, "Look, my old boss here is a guy called Jean-Louis at a place called Le Palme d'Or in Cannes. We're going to go and see him, and I want you to see the restaurant, and I want you to experience what it's like to eat in a two Michelin star restaurant." And yeah, I was blown away. I was like, I've never seen cooking at this level. We did really good food at the time at Soho House. I was very proud of it. We used to change the menu every day. We were, cutting edge of innovation at that time. And I was really proud to be part of that team to do that. And, the level of people that were coming into our restaurant and the amount of press around our restaurant, and every day that I left, there were paparazzi outside, waiting, going, "Oh no, it's just the fat Maori," And I was like, "Just going home." Yeah, you know. And
Should have started getting the beatboxing out, see if they.
I think at that time it would have been quite current as well. I think yeah. So we went to this restaurant, and then the chef came out, Jean-Louis, and we met him, and I was like, "Oh my God, like, this food has been incredible. It's changed my life, and this is where I want to go. This is what I would love to do one day." And he said, "Well, why don't you have a stage?" And a stage, in sort of chef terminology, for those of you that don't know out there, is to work in a place for free. So you fund it yourself. You get your own flat. Sometimes there's accommodation, like staff accommodation, where, there's shared rooms and stuff, and, you can go and stay there for an amount of time to learn what the chef has to give you. And you'll start down the very low. You'll start by picking herbs and stuff, and then making your way up to different sections, pastry and meat and that, and you get to learn how to cook at that level. And so I was like, "Look, let me go back to London. I'll save up the money, and then I'll come back, and then I'll do it." And right at that moment, Nick Jones, the owner of Soho House, goes, "I'll pay for you, Matt." And so from that moment, I was living in France. So everyone went back, and I stayed in France for 6 months working with Jean-Louis at Le Palme d'Or. When you work within the world of Michelin, and I'm not sure, I think it's still pretty much the same, but anywhere from 1 star to 2 star to 3 star, you kind of all know each other, and all the restaurants are always in contact. It's really weird because you've got sort of like the 1 stars, and they all kind of hang out together. And you've got the 2 stars, as a very sort of cool, exclusive club. And then you've got the 3 stars, which no one talks to, You never see them out, they're like enigmas, And we were in this like really cool 2 star sort of place where I'm meeting all these incredible French chefs, and they're coming into our restaurant, and I'm serving them, and we're talking to them. I was the only Kiwi in the kitchen. I was the only English speaker in the kitchen, so I had to learn French like immediately, which I don't ask me to repeat anything, because it's just disgusting. That I've learned. It's just chef terminology. Things like, "I want to tickle your asshole with my little finger," and where
Is
the
that the starter or the
yeah,
side?
yeah, that was how I got into the kitchen. That's how it became popular. So obviously, other 2 star restaurants, they sort of notice you, and they they say, oh, you're not bad. I'd love to, watch your career, and maybe in the future you can come work for me. Now, one of those people was young Gordon Ramsay at the time, who had Hospital Road. And he said, like, if you come back to the UK, like, look me up. I've got a few restaurants. And he did at the time, had some really hot places. So I came back, and then I decided to go work with Jason Atherton at May's. And we opened May's Grill, which was kind of like his Michelin star steak restaurant, but it was also attached to May's restaurant, which was, again, one of the hottest restaurants in London at the time. It was like being on this really crazy stage of hospitality where you're in this open kitchen. So the kitchen was in a glass box, basically, so everyone could see in and you could all see out. So all the tables were around this glass box. So it felt like when you're eating in May's, you're eating in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really like crazy like process, because one, you had to keep it immaculately clean. Like, we are getting the floor swept every 3 minutes. You had to wipe down everything. You had to keep your jacket clean. If you got one spot on it, you had to change it immediately. It was such a high level of cookery that I would say would far surpass the French at the time. And so I, went from, it's kind of like playing in Burnley, going to play for Manchester United. And you're playing next to people like Ronaldo and like David Beckham and all these incredible players, and you are having to get up to their level immediately. And that was just terrifying for me. Those first couple of months, was so hard, so hard. I was doing 90 to 100 hours a week so we were trading. We were trading 6 days a week. On the Saturday, you would have to start at 7 in the morning, and we would finish service at 11, and then you deep clean, and you deep clean for 4 hours. And then you had your one day off, and then you're back into it again on the Monday. So on that one day off, you would sleep as much as you can. You would wash all your clothes from the week. You would try and wash yourself, and then you would go straight back into it. And that all those guys and girls became my family, and it was a really incredible place for me to work, and really put me in really good stead for kind of the rest of my career. So when I left there, I was a little bit in limbo at the time, and I've always hated Jamie Oliver until he did school dinners.
Yeah.
And when he did school dinners, one of the schools that he did it as was my son's school. At the time, my son was like 6 years old. And I had a real fucking thing against British schools, because every time like my son would go, he'd be like, there's fucking chicken nuggets and turkey Twizzlers and that. And me being a chef, and at the time, a fucking arrogant chef, was like, why the fuck are you eating that? You should be eating like really good stuff, lots of vegetables and lots of fruit. And that's how I was brought up as a kid. So I'm just trying to force my son just to eat vegetables and stuff all the time. So what he was preaching, I understood and I could empathize with, because I was like, fuck, they are eating shit,
Yeah.
Where I know most British kids now are going, fucking killed the turkey twizzler. And, I have a penchant for turkey twizzlers myself. I didn't get this fat fucking just like eating vegetables, my friends. Yeah, so that kind of changed my perception around him. And I was like, actually, I think a lot of this just came from jealousy. I was jealous that this young kid went through, one of the best kitchens in the UK, and then got the best opportunity in the world and made millions. And I think a lot of chefs were really jealous of him at the time, because we were all slogging it out. And he's there like slapping salmon fillets, and there was his hot girlfriend sliding down banisters. And we were staying in a house full of 20 Polish guys who were drinking vodka, going, fucking drink vodka for morning breakfast. I'm like, while he's like, making a fucking bacon sarnie for his mates. Anyway, I got an opportunity to potentially open a restaurant with him. And we met up, and it's crazy how the first time that I met him, because his diary is just madness. And so my meeting was at 6:15 in the morning at a restaurant. So I had to be there. I had to do a cook-off for him. So I had to be there at like 4 to prep all the food. So he would come in and taste the food, and then we'll sit down and we'll have a chat about what we're going to do. And he was the warmest and kindest and loveliest and really interested human that, I'd ever met. And it really threw me off because, like, most chefs are quite egotistical. And, he wasn't. He was like approaching something from a very different angle. And I was like, no, I think I can work with this guy. He's like really, really good. So then we opened Threadneedle Street, which was one of his sort of like, it was based on a Jamie's Italian, but it was kind of more of the fine dining and purely based around my skill set and the people who we brought on with us. So it was kind of like his testing ground for Jamie's Italian, but at the same time, it was also a more finer sort of side of Italian cookery, which was based in the city, right in the heart of the city of London. And so I ran that place for 3 years, and that did really well. And that was crazy. Again, being on this weird chef pedestal, working with, one of the best chefs, one of the greatest authors of our time, and it still freaks me out every now and then when I get a message from him pop up. It's like, fuck, it's Jamie. Jesus. You're sort of like, oh, but, he's amazing. He's like, hey, man, how you doing? Yeah, you good? How's things? How's life? You got any chefs or, we'll be talking about things or projects that he's doing or, he's really into charcoal at the moment. And we've been talking a lot about different charcoals and where they sort of come from, but I'm going a bit side on that one. So I finished working with him, and then we get to oh no, sorry. So it was about 2010. No, sorry, 2012 actually. He was releasing 15-minute meals, which was an iconic book for him. One of its
It
biggest
was massive.
I had it.
purely
Well, I
because
have had it. I've still got it. Yeah, I've still got it.
just so you know, it doesn't work. Okay, like feedback book he's ever had. It's hilarious watching him talk about it. So funny what like everybody like he gives himself feedback on it. So brilliant. But anyway, and you can imagine the guest list that's coming. So he's having the book launch at my restaurant. And I'm unslept. It's 3 days into it, and I'm just like, it's the day of, we've got Kevin Block, we've got Matt LeBlanc turning up, you've got just like the plethora, like Jodie Kidd, you've got Sienna Miller, just like the list was just daunting of people that are coming to this thing. And so we had sort of like a list of canapes from the book that we were doing, but as the guests arrived, we transformed the bar into a giant charcuterie platter. And it took me about 3 hours to build this thing. And I just wanted to make it as beautiful as possible. Me and Jamie had been speaking about it. So we wanted people to walk in. The grandeur of the room was so beautiful. It had this huge chandelier right underneath it. We had this like giant, like 5 meter charcuterie board, just groaning with olives and hams and mortadella and pickles and just incredible thing. And I'm sitting there finishing up this thing, and this annoying American walks up behind me and says, "Oh my God, dude, that thing looks fucking amazing." And I'm just like, please don't talk to me. Like I'm like terrified, I'm scared, and I don't really know what I'm doing. And I just said, yeah, I know that, thank you. And he goes, "Oh man, how long did it take you to make that?" And I was like, oh, fucking hell. It's like, a few hours, but I'm nearly there. And I was like, "Oh, so what are you doing here?" He goes, "Oh, I'm supposed to DJ." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." And so I turned around and said, "Oh, my name's Matt." And he's like, "Hi, I'm Christian Stevenson." And so I was like, "Oh, so what are you doing here?" And he goes, "Oh, I DJ'd at his wife's birthday party, and his wife got me to come and DJ for this." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And he's like, "I'm DJ barbecue. I do catertainment and shit." And I was like, "What a clown, man! Fuck." And I was sort of kind of obsessed with him because he walked off and walked out with this American spandex, and I was like, "Whoa, what's going on?" And like, you could see what he had for breakfast, and I was just like, actually. And then he started like DJing and playing the music and talking, and I was just like, actually, this guy's really good. He's playing music from my childhood. So things like CCR and like Van Morrison and like some old school funk, and I'm just like, actually, this guy's really cool, like really cool. And So we do the night, and it's just such a success. And me and him had been talking, saying how nervous we both were, and like, let's get each other through it. And he's just like, I can't eat because I'm going to vomit. I hadn't eaten for 3 days either. So, I made us some nice sandwiches. And when he had a break from DJ, we jumped out the back of the restaurant and, we had a sandwich together and we were just having a chat. And Jamie came out as well. And Christian started talking to me, and Jamie, and he was talking about this concept that he wants to do. And it's like, he's like, yeah, we're going to do music, and I'm going to do barbecue, and we're going to like smoke pork and do all this type of stuff. And I'll never forget looking at Jamie going, yeah, sure. Yep. Good luck, mate. And Jamie is like, yeah, this sounds like a fucking great idea. And I'm smiling in my head. I'm just like, okay, like, obviously the guy's never done anything like this before, and I was just like, good luck to you. And then he turned around to me and was like, hey, can I ask you some questions about it? Can we go out for a drink and do it? And Jamie's like, yeah, go. Why don't you guys go out and like, next week and meet up and have a chat about it? And I was like, okay, cool. And so a week later, I was out with Christian Stevenson, and we were talking about this DJ barbecue concept. And he's like, look, I've got a couple of events coming up. Why don't you come down and come check it out? And, before I knew it, we had started DJ barbecue. We started doing like big festival and camp festival and all these like crazy festivals. We learned very quickly which were the drug ones where no one would eat, and which ones were the family ones that everyone would eat. So we managed to sort of like move through all those festivals that, and go through those times to do that. And it was such an incredible time because my son was probably about 11 or 12 at the time, and he was obviously on the summer holidays coming with me. So it felt very much like a family affair. And Christian had his kids there as well. And, right now, like our kids, like Blue and Etienne, they're so close. They're like best mates, and they have been for many years. So we went through all of this for years while I was working for Jamie. So every weekend I'd have it off, and then I would go to Grill Stock and would cook for 4,000 people, and it would just be like utter madness. And the first time that I saw his smoker was just like, oh my God, I had no idea what to do. And he was explaining to me reverse flow and how it works and shit. And I was like, right, I'm a chef. You put the fire in there, the smoke comes out there, and everything cooks inside. Yes. Okay, that's all I need to know. Because I'm working commercially. I'm not working as like, a barbecuer to sit there and to work out how all these fundamentals work. But I did realize soon after that it's really important that the fundamentals of how fire works for it to cook something in a particular way that you want it to turn out. So I became quite obsessed with that style of cooking and that style of like barbecue and that. And we were sort of traveling around the country, and Christian's introducing me to all these crazy people and, really big names again in the genre. And I'm getting to meet all these people. And then I left Jamie's, and I left Jamie's to start up a pub with a couple of guys that I was going to go into business with, which wasn't a great sort of thing to begin with. There was a lot of red flags there, and I shouldn't have done this. And we got the pub open, and I was just like, I was absolutely done with the place. I was absolutely done with working with the guys. They were idiots. They were just not. We didn't have the same ethos when it came around, the fundamentals of people and how to run kitchens and sort of things like this. So I decided to leave, and guttingly, just like the day that I gave my notice, we got a mention in the Michelin Guide, and I couldn't believe it because it was all that work that went up to that. So I was kind of really proud that I got it there. Not that we got a star, but that to even be mentioned by the Michelin Guide, I was like absolutely blown away. And then I have some friends from New Zealand that ran a couple of restaurants over here called Caravan. And it was based on a concept that I used to work in New Zealand called Cafe La Fare, where they had a coffee roaster inside the restaurant, and then they had the restaurant basically. So they were roasting fresh coffee all day, every day, and then serving it within the restaurant. And they had some wholesale customers that would come in and pick up bags of coffee and stuff. And it was more like a hobby more than what they were doing it. And they were doing it in London and doing it really well. At the time, you couldn't find a decent coffee in London, and in New Zealand. We're very proud that we've been a very strong coffee drinking nation.
Yeah.
So they created this brand based on we wanted a decent coffee in London, which was hilarious. And so we went out for a drink one night, me and one of the owners, who's an old friend of mine from New Zealand, and he said, "Look, I've watched your career ever since you've been here. You know, you've been great. I'd love to have you on board to open our third restaurant." So I was like, "Okay, yeah, cool. I'm into it." And so after working for 6 months with them, of just doing training, we were aiming to open the restaurant towards the end of that year. They turned around and they said, "Look, you know, what you know and what you're bringing to the business is a lot more valuable outside of a kitchen rather than inside of a kitchen. So would love to offer you a group role where you're overseeing all three kitchens." And so that was my sort of first foray into being an executive chef. So I did that, and we took the brand from 2 restaurants to 9 restaurants, which was again an incredible journey of 7 years. And we're about to open up our 10th restaurant in Manchester, and you know things were going really well. And I was about to I was just being married. So you know, I flew out to New Zealand February 2020 for a month's wonderful, beautiful honeymoon, and I was out there, and we were absolutely loving it, and it was so great. And I came back to London, and I was like, "I'm ready for this. I am absolutely going to kill it, and this is going to be the greatest year of my life. We're going to open our 10th restaurant." There were lots of chats about pay rises and sort of things like this. And we got back, and within a week, we were stuck inside. And my greatest advice to you guys is that if you ever get married, to test out your marriage, don't be locked in a house with a woman for 6 months. That really fucking tests you, man. And you know, this is where sort of like my life rapidly changed. It was at the time I had just been I think I can talk about this, and I'm pretty sure that I can, but I was given a big green egg without the knowledge of big green egg knowing. Now, it was given to me from a friend who had recently started working there, but he kind of said to me, "Don't worry, we're going to work it out." So I started cooking on this, and I started cooking at home and posting my sort of results, and you know, a few viral videos went on TikTok, and you know, things were going sort of kind of really well. And then lots of suppliers, my suppliers from Caravan, were sending me things like half a goat and, you know, a big beef haunch or a 10-kilo crab and just crazy stuff. And I was like, my God, what are you doing? And they were like, "Well, we just want you to see if you can cook it on the barbecue and see what you do with it." And so I ended up having all this meat and stuff left over. So I could only gift a certain amount to either side of my neighbors. And so one of my neighbors going, "Well, why don't you put it into the WhatsApp group and sell it? Like, at least you can just make a bit of money off it. You got it for free." So I did, and it just fucking flew. So I decided like, oh, I'm going to do this once a week because I think that it could just bring a bit of sunshine to everyone's life that's like caught at home. And it's one meal that the families don't have to cook. And I think it can be okay. And it's quite unique of what I do. And it was a good way to test out the food that I love to eat and that I did. So much to my wife's delight, we went from doing 20 meals a week to 480. I employed
Oh, man. Well, all on that big green egg.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a nightmare, to be honest. Yeah, we got 6 drivers. I turned my 1-bedroom West London flat into a commercial kitchen. My wife was so happy with me. So happy. She was working full time at the time. So she's just like, "What the fuck are you doing?" Getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And, you know, I had to employ more chefs, more people, more drivers. And after a year, we took on a commercial space. So I got like a proper big kitchen. I shared a space with a couple of other restaurants that were doing similar things as me. And we just kept on getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then all the restaurants reopened. And literally overnight, that business just died. Like nobody was getting boxes anymore. Nobody was getting everything. But that was okay. Like, you know, I hadn't invested any money in it.
Yeah.
It was washing its own face. And all I was doing was making pure profit, you know?
Yeah.
Make sure this doesn't go out to the tax man, please. You know? Yeah.
You're
I
welcome.
pay tax. Hey. I'm not Jimmy Carr. I pay tax. No, I didn't. Anyway, So that like sort of exploded during that time, and I was just like, oh my God, this is like absolutely amazing. We went back into the restaurants, and I was so happy to be back there. But everything had changed. Like we had stopped from deciding to open the restaurant. We were just trying to survive. We're just trying to get people to come in. We're trying to recoup the money. Caravan did something which was just really amazing, and they borrowed a lot of money, like about £1 million, to pay the staff during the whole of COVID, so we didn't lose anybody. And
Yeah.
I was really proud of them for doing that. They're really good people, and it's like you hear horror stories of like these companies that just made everyone redundant, and they
Yeah.
were just like, living off furlough, and like Caravan didn't. They were like, we're going to pay you full wages. They paid me full wages throughout the whole time. And it's a really amazing thing to do. And then the message came through one day that every sort of son, daughter, human hates to see. And I got a message from a friend of mine in New Zealand saying that your mum's in hospital, and sadly she had had a heart attack, and she was put into end of life care, and so I had to go home.
Yeah.
And my New Zealand was on lockdown, so nobody could come in, nobody could go out. So I had to spend 11 days begging the government to allow me to come home. And much to my delight and surprise, that it came straight from the Prime Minister, that she's like, get him home, and they did. They got a plane for me. I flew from Singapore to New Zealand. There was me and one other on a 737, and it was the greatest flight of my life. We got to sit anywhere where we wanted. It was just amazing. I've never been in first class before, but they didn't have any service because they had nobody on there. You couldn't go into the cockpit or anything. You could just walk around the plane, and I ended up chatting to this guy, and then we'll put straight into quarantine. But sadly, Mum passed away. I got to see her before she did, and that was really hard. But then when I came back to London, life had changed. Myself had changed. I think my priorities changed, and I decided that I had lived years in servitude to my industry, to hospitality, and I love it. I am so passionate about it. But then I just kind of like thought, well, I wouldn't, I would do my mother a disservice if I didn't continue to be better and get better and do more things that made me happy rather than making other people happy. So
Mhm.
yeah, 2022, I left Caravan, and I started up my own food consultancy, doing menu development and design. At that time, I'd been playing around with sauces that I've been upselling during COVID, and decided to launch those. I started writing a book, which I'm still sort of going through, which you're hearing sort of like the pretense of the book. There's so much more in that, but a lot of stuff obviously that will have to remain in the book. But yeah, which kind of just leads me to now, really. So it's just crazy. So what am I doing now? I'm sort of a live fire enthusiast. I love going around to demos, doing demos at festivals, and I'm really into supper clubs at the moment. So I've got like about 19 supper clubs booked this year, which I'm really stoked about. Some massive festivals around the UK, a lot around the UK. I'm going to be cooking in Scotland, Wales, and Ireland, and down in Cornwall, and a couple in London, and some up north as well with those guys doing block grills. I'm going up there to cook with them. And yeah, I'm just living a really good life at the moment, and I'm just really happy. And 7 years sober now. I miss it. I miss drugs, and I miss drinking. Because there's no good story without drugs or drink. But at the same time, it also makes me happy with where I'm at.
That's it for another episode of the Meet and Greet Barbecue podcast. What a truly inspirational story from Matt. This is only just the end of part one of a two-part episode. So please do tune in 2 weeks' time when this is released. As ever, we want to hear from you. We want to understand what you want to talk about. So please do get involved. Contact us on socials. Tell us what you want us to talk about. And until next time, keep on grilling.
Today's episode of the Meet and Greet Barbecue podcast is brought to you by AOS Outdoor Kitchens. They are the South's leading outdoor kitchen design and installation specialists.